don't see. There we go. All right. Well, everybody, welcome. I'm Steve Lander, Director of Payment Management for WithersRavenel. And today's Lunch and Learn is Asset Management 101 with a focus on bridges. And we were just talking about bridges. And this is our 50th Lunch and Learn since January of 2021. So a big milestone for us, and we're glad that you could be here today. So hope everybody's safe and getting away for vacation and that sort of, and staying cool, right? It's pretty hot for most part of the country. The intent of these lunch and learns is to introduce new products and practices, broaden your knowledge of different ways of doing things. And, typically we're talking about pavement, but today we're going to be talking about asset management and bridges. So something hopefully you can bring home and use at your municipality or county. So in our chat area, we're going to be posting a PDH link. So if you need PDHs, you get one PDH for this. I'll be posting those. Deanne is having some technical difficulties today, which is not unusual for us to have technical difficulties. So I'll be posting those throughout the Lunch and Learn. Our email addresses will be posted, as will the WithersRavenel website if you want to check into some of what we do. All of these lunch and learns are recorded. So if you have to drop off for any reason, or if you think that you would, someone else you think might benefit from this, let us know. We can get you the link for the recording, and also too is we can get you a copy of the presentation. And every one of these lunch and learns, I always like to ask folks to provide some ideas on things that they would like us to present on. And we've had one person ask. So I'm hoping this time that we're going to get a bunch of people typing things in of different ideas. We've tried to keep this so we're not repeating things. There's a lot of folks in the industry, a lot of different topics. So more ideas, the more topics we can make sure it doesn't repeat itself. So the format of the Lunch and Learn today is that Malak is going to be speaking for about 45 to 50 minutes, give or take. Everybody's muted and no one else can see anybody else. And right now there's 24 attendees. So if you do have a question, ask it while Malak is talking, and then what we want to do is create more of a conversation than Malak just goes through his slides, because he might end up talking about something that someone has a question about, and it just makes for a better presentation. So I get to introduce Malak Bahrami, who's the Director of Asset Management for WithersRavenel. He's a longtime professional engineer and program manager. He got experience in asset inventory, condition assessment, process development, and capital improvement planning. His background includes experience in infrastructure engineering, land development, and construction services. And his past experience, he was an asset management program manager with Fairfax County, Virginia, and he spearheaded a 5-year plan with a net value of over $1 billion. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Malak.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. And no pressure, right? Thanks, Steve.
No pressure.
This is our 50th, no
Yeah,
pressure.
yeah, you better do a good job.
I'm afraid you're going to push me down the stairs if I don't, man. Hey, thank you, everyone. Thank you for making the time to be here today. I've put together a presentation here to go over basically, like Steve said, the similarities about asset management and how asset management program management is really asset type agnostic and how it aligns with bridges. But before we do that, I'm going to show you in the presentation some videos that I find very visceral. So let's lighten the mood for a sec and let's have an icebreaker dad joke. Here's the dad joke question. What do you call 007 taking a bath? We're going to wait 1 minute, see what people type in the chat. I don't know, can I see the chat? Yeah, I think so. Come on, guys, put your best guess in there. There's no wrong answer. All right. Ready for the unveiling? 007, guys. 007. And that is the best I've got. That's the best joke you're going to get out of me today. So, but all right. Let's get things going. I want to start by really showing you guys something that to me drives the point home as to why we're here. How does asset management and risk and all that come into play when we're talking about bridges? So let's just roll into it right away, and let's talk about failures, bridge failures. This is Morandi Bridge in Florida, in Italy. It was built in '67, carried 25 million vehicles per day. It failed in August of 2018, and 39 people perished. There were signs. I've got some excerpts here from the report. There was a 2011 report that said heavy traffic has taken its toll. There was a 2016 structural engineer who said there are errors in the bridge and that have to be replaced, and high maintenance cost signal rebuild is more economical. So these are post-event what happened, and let's look at the video.
Oddio! 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 Oddio!
So that was in Italy. Unfortunately, this is not just in elsewhere. It happens at home too. And what happened in Pennsylvania in January of 22 was a failure of Forbes Avenue Bridge in Pittsburgh. It was carrying a gas line, and when it failed, the gas line failed, and there was natural gas that they had to deal with and shut it off. There were 15 people injured and seven vehicles destroyed. Fortunately, there weren't any fatalities, but when afterwards the federal investigators completed their report, they included this statement: likely cause of failure is poor inspection and maintenance. So fortunately, we have this video. Unfortunately, it's a failure video again, but I think it's important for us to look at it for a sec.
In the rearward-facing video, the beginning of the collapse can be seen as the railing near the west end of the bridge begins to drop. As the west end of the bridge fell, video from the forward-facing camera shows the east end of the bridge still intact. This video evidence indicated that the collapse started near the west end of the bridge.
The Fern Hollow Bridge collapse should never have happened. Your injuries, both physical and psychological, should never have occurred.
Inspection reports over the years repeatedly documented clogged drains in areas where leaves or other debris collected, allowing water and road salts to run down the bridge legs and accumulate on the legs near the transverse tie plates. This accumulation of water and debris on the bridge legs prevented these areas from drying, which, in turn, prevented the protective patina from forming on the uncoated weathering steel.
In fact, had contractors for the city of Pittsburgh correctly calculated and accounted for the effects of section loss and other factors back in 2014, the Fern Hollow Bridge should have been closed.
So, as you guys can see, what we're trying to do is avoid this from happening. What we're trying to do is prevent this from happening and do something before it's too late. So I started with the agenda today is I started with the Morandi and Forbes Bridge videos and cases because I wanted to kind of frame why it's important. I'll go over why asset management matters a little bit further as well, and we'll talk about some failures and deferred maintenance. I'll share the America's report card infrastructure that ASCE puts out, and we'll talk about the evolution of NBIS and how it's moving towards the risk-based inspection intervals. And basically talking about decisions made based on data and aligning your data and your decision. And I'll share a kind of a generic roadmap, and then hopefully we'll have some time for questions and answers. Put this here because I think this resonates. You know, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If we could prevent these bridges from failing, we would save millions. Not to mention the lives that we would save, and people's lives won't be affected. Okay, so why asset management matters? Well, we all experience the fact that budget is almost never enough, and it's always changing. So you have O&M money that's limited and fickle. You have CIP money that's limited and fickle, which leads to a deferred CIP and O&M backlog for all of your assets, including bridges. Now, you're going to have function critical and mission critical assets. Bridges are one of those things. So you need to categorize, how do I spend? What do I do? How do I prioritize spending this limited amount of money that I have? And to do that, you really want to take into account the risk associated with each of your assets and try to mitigate that. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to make sure the show goes on. Now, not all failures, we looked at the failures of Morandi and Forbes Bridge. Not all failures are catastrophic. A lot of failures could be just interruption of service or inconveniences. But when we say just, you know, it takes 7 to 10 times more, it's as a general rule, to fix and restore service than it does to prevent and properly maintain and prevent that from happening. So repair and restoration cost is always multiples of the cost. Once again, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure here. This is the 2021 American Infrastructure Report Card. I know ASCE has put a newer one up here out recently, but I included this one because Forbes Bridge failed in 2022. And you can see that this is across our nation. ASCE was saying, hey, bridges are on a downward climb. The trend is downward for the condition of our bridges. I'm not saying we could have predicted Forbes Avenue Bridge necessarily, but what I'm saying is there are data points for us to look at and ask questions. Talking about NBIS, most of you already know this, but just to reorient everybody, you know, 1967, Silver Bridge failed in West Virginia, and that collapse led to the creation of the National Bridge Standards. Then in 2007, you guys may remember there was the I-35 failure, which they determined it was out-of-plane bending of the gusset plates, which actually the inspection reports had photos and showed it. And that created the reform for load rating of gusset plates. That was now included as a separate item. Then in 2015, they did the element level reporting, and 2022 was the NBIS final rule where they went to a risk-based inspection cycles. Basically, they're moving towards moving away from reactive and trying to be more predictive and prevent things from happening. So more towards, okay, what's the risk and how do we prevent that from happening? How do we avoid that risk? How do we mitigate it? The foundations of NBIS remain the same. You know, you still have to do your visual and tactile inspection techniques, the deterioration modes and failure modes of concrete, steel, weld, timber. They haven't changed. They're still being used. And even the condition rating scale still is there for the elements. But what NBIS has done is they've built on this with creating the condition states that go for the elements. I don't know, you guys may remember, I remember doing the SINA sheets separate from the bridge inspections. Basically, they used to be done kind of separately, parallel, loosely related. What's happening now is that information is being brought into consideration when it comes to each element. So now the elements are broken up into the condition states, and the total amount of condition state has to add up to the quantity of the element. So if you have a breast wall that's 100 linear feet, and just to make it easy, let's say 80 linear feet is in good condition, then it's got maybe that you got 10 in condition state 2 and 10 in condition state 3. So that would, if I did my math right, that should add up to 100 there. So we're moving from that general rating to this quantitative mapping of the element itself. So it's not just assigning one rating to the entire element. It's saying, okay, here's the rating for the element, but this is how it looks. This is the DNA of the element. Before, we had every 24 months, every bridge that was over 20 feet long had to get inspected every 24 months. And that was kind of a blanket rule across the board. Now, with the risk-based inspection setup, you could go from 12 to 72 months. There are two methods. Method one is when the program manager can make the adjustments to the inspection cycle, and that usually is when they are using the data points out of the bridge inspections. They're not really defining a new way of doing things, but they're using the data that is in bridge NBIS and specifications for National Bridge Inventory to determine if they're going to change the inspection cycle. Now, there is a secondary method, which is a formal risk model, which requires FHWA to review the risk model. The bridge program manager would have to submit the risk model, get it approved, and if the risk model is approved, then they can use it to adjust the inspection cycles. So we're moving towards the risk and how likely is this bridge to fail based on the condition state of the elements and how they boil up. What is that likelihood of failure? And then what's the consequence of failure? How many vehicles? How many lanes? Is it just traffic, or is it traffic below and above? Or is it you have pedestrian, vehicular, and multimodal? So it could be any of those that comes into play in your risk model. But what's important to me, and what I think is important, is the condition states are not just reporting. In a sense, like I remember when we did SINA, we would say this many this many linear feet in this condition state, or count, or whatever. But now, if a component has a 3 or less, then you're required to actually do a review, and I would strongly recommend that you consider reevaluating whatever is the element rating if you have condition states that are falling 3 or below. Now, it's not required by code. It's not you're not forced to do so, but if you have those condition states, it's prudent to do that. NBIS has been moving the same direction that ISO 55000, ASTM International, Institute of Asset Management, APWA. There are other organizations out there all circling around asset management and managing infrastructure. ISO 55000 talks about value, risk, and performance balance, which is the same thing ASTM E3210, which is the practice for standard practice for infrastructure asset management, or infrastructure management, talks about as well. And they also talk about the maturity and performance as well. And then IAM also talks about the whole life cycle planning and your inventory integrity. There are a lot of commonalities, but basically what's happening is now your inspections are being aligned with the global trends of doing your condition assessment, and inspection is a condition assessment. So now you're doing your condition assessment based on where is my largest data gap, or what is my highest risk asset, and those are the ones that you're going to inspect more often. I think this is applicable, in my opinion, to any asset management journey when you're setting out on your asset management journey, whether it's bridges or pavement. And Steve, if I'm talking out of turn, you can smack me. But you first want to organize your asset inventory. What do I got? Where is it? What is it at? And to do that, the best thing to do is to use you want to have a standardized data model. Now that's good for bridges because you already have the NBIS specifications for National Bridge Inventory, which standardizes your condition states, your elements, which makes a data digestion easier for any kind of analysis for risk and any kind of decision making. Then you got to define your service levels and your risk criteria. And then you talk about building policies for inspection and reinvestment. Again, this is where NBIS is ahead because they already have these policies and standards that are nationally applicable, which makes it good for bridge owners. As owners of those assets, they have standards that they can lean into. They don't have to create their own. And then you want to communicate that and train everybody on all of it throughout your organization. I know I'm oversimplifying it, but I want to kind of show you guys how the approach is the same regardless of the asset type. The core of ISO 55000 is value, delivering value and maximizing the value and minimizing risk and minimizing cost, which is what we're doing here by making a risk-based inspection cycle. So you're not over-inspecting anything, I wanted to include this roadmap. This is the APWA roadmap for asset management. I wanted to show you guys, target level of service, assign risk, critical rating, your asset information, your asset inventory and condition stuff. All of that goes into play for the asset management approach, but they're not the only ones, right? We talked about ISO, we talked about ASTM, we talked about Institute of Asset Management. This is how Institute of Asset Management talks about asset management system approach. And again, you're seeing the common asset information. That's your inventory, condition assessment, condition states for the different element. You want to review risk, right? And you want to have an asset management decision-making process. Your risk model is a decision-making tool. And then you want to have a strategy of what you do those things. This is, again, common in that you see that that was the asset management program for IAM. This is the asset management plan for IAM. But again, same common threads: risk assessment, decision making, capital investment, asset management planning. And these are the questions that you guys have seen. I think EPA many years ago put it out, and EURISA put it out, but it's the same questions: is what is the current state of my asset? What is my required sustainable level of service? Can I keep all my bridges at 5 or better? Whatever that may be. I'm just making something up here. Which assets are critical to sustain performance, and what are the best CIP and O&M strategies for my asset management? So again, this is trying to get the most value out of your asset, best bang for your buck. This is ASTM E3210-2021, I think is the latest one. There may be a 30 now, but I wanted to show you guys this flowchart. You don't need to read it, but it exists. It's a few pages, and it has a number of different flowcharts when you read the ASTM standard practice. But in step 2A here, they talk about select PE to conduct infrastructure service evaluation, which aligns with what we got going on with bridge inspection, which a PE needs to be in charge of the program. So I just want to show you guys these commonalities because this applies to all of these infrastructure types. These are the 15 structure types as outlined in ASTM E3210, but I agree with them. You got your water, you got your storm and sewer, your buildings, and here we are with bridges in transit and travel. I would even argue that there is some bridges in recreation, there's bridges in nature. And when I worked at Fairfax County, we had those, and they were just boardwalks or a observation deck. So it wasn't really to transport anybody, but it was something that needed to be maintained and handled. But let's take a step back and simplify the whole thing. Asset management happens, there's a mission. there's a mission that needs to be accomplished or fulfilled, but that mission is executed within a context. And that context, to accomplish your mission and that within that context, you're going to utilize certain assets, right? Okay, let's keep going. So if your asset management system, now you're at layer 2, your mission gives you your mission objectives. What are those things that you want to accomplish? Your context gives you your constraints. They might be environmental, they might be financial, they might be social, whatever those constraints are. And then you want to have high efficiency and high efficacy utilization of your assets in accomplishing those objectives within those constraints. Where do the people come in? Well, you got your mission objectives. You need to talk to your stakeholders, and you need to have them present because we're going to make some decisions because the constraints are reality. So you involve the stakeholders, get their input, and combine the objectives and input and put everything in the context with the constraints. And then you got to make some decisions. What do I inspect? What do I replace? What do I rebuild? So that you can continue having that high utilization, high efficiency, high efficacy utilization of your asset. But this setup really provides your data outputs and your KPIs, which enables you as an organization to go around this circle every iteration, knocking it in the right direction. I think this is the best art I've got, guys. So forgive me for the quality of the art, but the message here is this: regardless of what organization you are and what asset type you are, for bridges, fortunately, because we have the NBIS and have had it since the 60s, there's a lot more standardization. But again, there are a lot of organizations that I see that still have paper in their business flow processes. Their processes are ad hoc, so they don't always do things the same way. And they have a lot of data gap and outdated technology. The problem is oftentimes they look at the outdated technology as the obvious thing, thinking it's going to fix all of their problem. But what happens is you really need to bring all of these pieces together. You got to add the strategic planning and resources and the culture change in your organization to realign it so that your system can give you the data-driven decision. Example of a data-driven decision is changing the inspection cycle based on the condition state of the bridge. Risk-based prioritization. When you take into account likelihood of failure and consequence of failure, now you're looking at risk instead of looking at just the condition or something like that. Instead of going worst first, you're saying which one is the highest risk. And it really puts your organization on a roadmap to get the most out of your assets. This is how I think of it. I say asset management needs to have these 6 pillars. It needs to have the pillar of understanding, and that's kind of the you are here on the map, right? But you also need to know where you're going on the map. So where's your destination? You got to have involvement. You got to have your people, your stakeholders. Everybody needs to be involved in the program. And then you got to have governance. And what we're talking about here is a beautiful example of how governance is affecting asset management and bridge inspection with the change from 24-month cycle to a risk-based inspection cycle. Your processes, you want to make sure you capture your organization's processes. And an example of this could be the person who's maintaining the bridge. Let's make sure we give them a checklist of common things to look at. That's an example of a process. And you guys might already be doing this. I'm just sharing examples to help them demonstrate the applicability of these 6 pillars to asset types. You have resources and tools, right? You can't do anything without resources and tools and money and having the necessary staff to accomplish your mission. And then again, training comes in. You have to train everybody and at every level on everything so that everyone is on the same page. I use the analogy, it helps me understand it. When we were kids, we used to get together and decide what game we want to play. And again, this doesn't apply too much to bridge inspection because we already know what we're doing. We're doing bridge inspection. Our assets are defined in a lot of ways. But still, there are some other things that we want to define about our bridges for a particular owner that might be unique to their environment. Maybe it's they have a lot of de-icers and the road spray is terrible. Maybe it's they're in a cold environment and their bridges go through a lot of cycles of heating and cooling. So I'm just giving you guys examples of why it's important to fine-tune the program. Going back to the sports example, when we were kids, we would get together and first decide what game we're going to play. We never told our friend, "Hey, Johnny, why don't you go over there and shoot some hoop and keep track of your scores for your basketball, and we'll use those scores." That's information. That's data. We need data as we do our asset management program. But we might decide to play soccer. How would those data match, right? That would be the equivalent of, I have managed assets that was in a 4 rating system. This was my multimodal trail. It was, I think it was A, B, C, D, and then I had a 5 rating, condition rating for the other equipment like facilities and HVAC and stuff. And my bridges, we had the 0 to 9. So how do we crosswalk these different things at an organizational level so that when you're looking at the bridge outputs and you're looking at the other outputs at a direct at a higher level, making decisions about where to put the money, everything, you're comparing apples to apples. So again, understanding, we got to have the financial vision of where we are and where we're heading and what does our financial future looks like. We got to understand our environmental constraints. There are going to be social constraints. There might be a couple of bridges that serve one part of our town. Those might be more critical than another part of the town that has many bridges serving it. You can have your current system state. We talked about the question of what you have, where is it, what state is it in, and so on, which is what we're talking about with regards to bridge inspection. I remember when I did my bridge reports, we did the inventory, measured the parapet, measured the bridge length, and updated all that in the bridge inventory, took the GPS. Again, where is it, what is it, quantifying it, and doing a condition assessment, and then determining what's your current level of service. What are your bridges operating at when you're setting these thresholds currently, and where do you want to be? Stakeholder involvement, I think this is critical. This is where culture forms in an organization, where you have leadership and everybody up from top to bottom involved in adopting this new approach. Again, this is for bridge inspection. Now you have the risk model, which wasn't something that existed before 22. Tongue twister. Take two. There was nothing before 2022. Anyway, so you want to make sure you involve your asset stakeholders in all your conversations that pertain to your level of service. So if the community wants all of their bridges to be an 8 or better across the board, all elements, well, there's a cost associated with that. And then there needs to be adequate funding allocated to provide operation and maintenance support and capital investment. And one thing I always say is, you make sure you have representations from your financials, from your operations, and from your community when you're having these engagement meetings, because it's really important for those three to be present. Governance. Again, I love bridge inspection and bridge inspection standards because you got thousands of pages of standardized way of generating data, which is going to be the same for the most part. I know some inspectors do it a little bit different than others, but for the most part, you have very structured standard data, so which is really good for bridges and doing the bridge inspection, risk-based bridge inspection program. You create your policies based on your standards and what your organization wants to accomplish, right? Again, a policy could be we adjust our maintenance, our O&M based on the risk as well as everything else, not just the inspection cycle. And then you want to audit, right? You want to audit your own program and make sure that your reports are providing you the data that you needed to provide so that you can make data-driven decisions. I mentioned process, and I think, again, all of these pillars are critical, but when I get to this, I keep saying this one is really important. They're really all important, but here's another thing is about the business flow processes. I tell my clients, some of my clients are like, "Oh, we need a new software." even if you get the new AASHTO but you don't have the bridge inspection program set up in your organization, you might not get to the results that you want. Think of it this way: if you're not happy with the results of your organization today, getting a new latest, greatest technology and creating automation just gets you to the results that you don't like faster. So you need to kind of look at your organization and change the flow of work. Make sure you capture those data points. Make sure you train your inspectors to adequately quantify the different condition states for all the elements so that your reports are data rich and they have data definition as well. And then you want to have a continuous improvement program, right? Because an organization is constantly growing. I like to think of infrastructure as a shoe and the community as a foot. When I buy shoes for my kids, I'm trying to buy a shoe that's not so big for my kid that it compromises safety and he's tripping over himself all the time. And I don't want it to be so small that it's brand new shoe, but I got to replace it because he outgrew it. What I want to do is I want to right size the shoe to the foot so they grow, so there's enough room for the foot to grow before the shoe is outdated. That's infrastructure. You want your community to grow, and you want to have enough room to grow so your bridges don't become functionally obsolete just after 2 months after the construction was complete because they changed the road rating or the ADT or something like that. Tools and resources, technology and hardware. You got bridge inspectors are already using tablets and all sorts of remote sensing technology to basically automate and leverage technology for the better. In the old days, I remember I had paper and pen, and actually one time I fell in the water and my report got washed away and I had to reinspect the bridge. That was fun. But that's an important part of this asset management program, and it's critical to make sure that you test the equipment that you have to make sure it's calibrated, to make sure it's giving you the outputs that you want to have, so that your stakeholders, your inspectors, don't have to inspect something multiple times, or so that they don't do something and then the results never show. That would be discouraging to the operational staff. You want to have a communication plan with people, right? What am I going to communicate to whom, when, how, with what method? And you want to have a change management plan for your organization as a whole, in a sense of, here we are today. Let's say we're a paper-driven organization and we just bought AASHTO. How do we get to using fullest extent? I'm just assuming for the example that it's AASHTO. And then we come back to training, right? Now you got to have your outreach and education and training, because like I said, you need to train your community on what you guys do and why it matters and why it costs money, because they got to pay for it. The community is using it, right? So they need to know what they're getting for that money, and that a lot of times they need to be educated on that. So that's important. Outreach is important, and educating your community is important. But within your organization, you want to also have empowered all your different levels of staff to be adding to the program, and how they can do that, right? One of the things I find really useful is having a train-the-trainer. Let's say you have a new inspection program or software installed. Focus on identifying your lead person who's the champion, and help make them a good trainer so that they can be a local asset to their colleagues. It's a lot easier to walk up to your friend and ask a question than to open a manual or file a ticket online or open a PDF and try to find the answer. But that doesn't mean don't do those things. What I'm saying is you need to cover all the different bases, because some people are like self-paced learning and having interactive training. Some people like to read it. So it's just providing different tools to continuously improve and train your organization as a whole. Now, we looked at the columns standing in front of them, or profile view. This is plan view in my head. It's a circle. It just goes round and around. It's like doing dishes or laundry. It never ends. Just hopefully you get better and more efficient at it as time goes on. There are some common things that I see that I think you should do whenever you're setting out on your asset management journey. I say sharpen your axe. Too often we have the burning desire to go out there and start doing work and collecting data, but we want to make sure the data collection is very intentional, methodical, and efficient. There's a cost associated with your inspectors or your operational staff doing more data collection. So it's important for you to show them that you're utilizing that data and how you're utilizing that data, because the last thing you want is to add additional load onto the operational staff and collect the data and then do nothing with it. You want to be flexible, right? This is a growth mindset. You have to keep nudging yourself in the right direction. And to do that, you need to remain flexible as time goes on. You're going to have data gaps. That's just the reality. It's just that which are those high risk data gaps, or are they data gaps that I can live with? Is it that, does this bridge have a decorative plaque on it? Or is it a protective coating issue? So those two are different data, and the gap has different risk associated with it. Tracking standardized data and simplifying collection. This is, again, I think bridge inspection is an incredible opportunity. NBIS standards are awesome for this because they really have put a framework in place for all bridge owners to just lean into and adopt and have a program that already has a backbone and a framework. A lot of times for other assets, like there may not be national standards like this, and you can't compare apples to apples. Even one county compared to its neighboring county, you might not be able to compare them because their condition assessment is in different rating system. So I think bridge inspection is awesome because there's so much. Bridge management is awesome because there's so much data that is available that you're being provided that, hey, use it like this, and this is how you standardize it. And I really love passive data collection. So if you have a person that's driving by somewhere every week, they drive that way. For some reason, they go over that bridge that's right by the brick plant. And you can tell them, hey, that's an old bridge that I know those brick plant trucks go over that bridge all the time. Why don't you every week that you go, just take a look at X, right? That's a way of a kind of incidental data collection. The person is already there. What data can I ask them to collect just because they're there? And then depending on your asset type, you want to talk about your data sets and prioritizing them. And again, the primary would be your high risk data that we were talking about. I was saying categorize your data gaps by risk. And then cost and mission criticality, that always comes into play. It's been the theme here in the presentation, right? Now, there are some don'ts. These are some of my advice or recommendation. Exercise impulse control. Planning is pointless. We need the data now. We're behind. We got to do this. Pump the brakes and identify your highest risk data gap and focus on that. Software modernization. Automating obsolete processes just propagates your issue and gets you to the results that you don't want faster. Making changes. You make a change in every system, there's a lag between change on the input and the result that you get on the output. So when you make a change, don't expect tomorrow everything will be different. There's got to be a time frame where this lag catches up. These are some of the some quotes that I've heard over time that I like. One of them is, well, that's the asset manager's job. It's not. It's an entire organization. Asset manager is a bookkeeper, and the bookkeeper can't know what the operational staff know. A bookkeeper can't know what the condition assessment staff know. So that's, I think, is important to understand that this is a team effort. Easy thing is always the best thing. Well, not really. Easy thing today might be, you know what? I want to simplify my condition rating to 1, 2, 3. Well, adding granularity 10 years later means you got to go back and figure out what did 1 translate to for now that you have 4, 5, 6. That's the next guard's problem. You know, this is something that I believe in wholeheartedly, and this is our company's mission, and we're here to leave things better than we found them. And that does not align for me. I think that is not that we need to in infrastructure be thinking about when I'm dead and gone, how will things be better? How can I have a net impact that make things better?
Hey,
These are
hey,
some of the
Malak,
common.
got some
Yeah,
questions coming in.
sure.
Hey, are are there any free or very low cost bridge management software options that municipal government can use? I'm aware of Agile Assets and BRM, but both options are no-goes for our IT department due to cost.
I'm not aware of anything free. There are many asset management programs out there. I mean, I would have to, honestly, I don't want to shoot from the hip here and give you just an answer just to give you an answer. I'm happy to research that and try to find something for you if that's acceptable.
Another question, when you say not to automate obsolete processes, do you have any examples of obsolete processes?
Sure. Here's an obsolete process. I once was looking at a process where there was a CMMS system. The CMMS system would auto-generate the work orders. Then there was a administrative assistant who would print out the work orders and staple them and put them in an outgoing folder. The operator would come in, pick up the pieces of paper, and take the pieces of paper to their truck, go out to the sites, make changes, sometimes notate the work order, sometimes not, then would bring them back and store them on his desk. And some of those got entered into the CMMS and some of them didn't. The breakdown was when the operator was collecting the data, there was no direct way for him to input the data into the CMMS system. So with this conversion from electronic to paper, changing hand and coming back and them trying to read what the guy wrote in the field, it became an outdated process. And the updated process would be to train your operator and give him a tablet so that you don't have to constantly transfer information from one sheet or one place or one format to another. Does that help? Is that answering the question?
I think so. That's a good example. So does WithersRavenel have a bridge management software? So we do model bridges. We don't have a software but we do use software.
So yeah, we do have we use multiple softwares actually, but they're risk-based prioritization softwares. Any other questions?
That's it for questions right now. So
okay. I was right here at the bottom, and I think especially right now with the weather pattern shifts that we're seeing, I think these are important. You know, one of them is we've been doing it like this for years, and nothing bad has ever happened. That's normalcy bias, and we're seeing how this will never flood here like this is flooding. I have clients in the western part of North Carolina that went during Hurricane Helene. The public works building became an island because everything around it was flooded. So they had no access to their public works building, their equipment and stuff. So just because it had never flooded before, that had never happened before, it didn't prevent it from happening. Everyone needs to get exactly what they want because they're all different. It's about a whole system. And if you're looking at modernization, we're talking about selecting a work order management or bridge management system. You want to get all the different players in the room. Yeah, maybe not everybody gets their favorite thing, but we need to identify those critical things for each group and make sure they get their critical things at least. And then we can talk about their favorite thing. And how do we achieve that? Can we get another way of delivering that result to them? The other one is once we have 100% of the resource and the buy-in we need, ... That's, paralysis by analysis. You're never going to have 100% of everything that you need and all the budget. So the question is, how do I make the decision today that nudges me in the right direction? I think I think I saw something pop up. Go back. Do I need to go back? Do you have another question, Steve?
Yeah, when choosing between different software options for asset management, are there key functions or aspects of the software that are critical for effective asset management?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that depends on the organization and what we're doing, right? So I'll give you an example of a CMMS implementation that I'm involved in right now. And the client was looking at all the different softwares out there. They had vendors come in and do demonstrations for them, and they just couldn't decide. So they came to us and said, what do you guys think? And what we said is, hey, how about we first figure out a jig that you can measure these systems out there against and design this jig for your organization's needs. So it's kind of like a sieve analysis, right? We wanted to create this sieve analysis that we can pour in all these different CMMSs and shake it and see what stays at the bottom sieve. And what we did is we actually tagged along with the operational staff, and made note. The interviewed the operational staff, observed their operations, went out to the field with them, recorded the work order process, and just really got a good sense for what were the needs of the organizations and what were the priorities. So we interviewed everybody from the guy who was fixing the water valves in the mud hole to the guy who was marking the gas lines early in the morning before the crews start, to the O&M manager who manages the ops of all the work orders for distribution, collection, and treatment was separate, but we did talk to the treatment plant folks as well, because we wanted to get a sense, what does the entire organization need? And we put together that requirements document, and then we provided the requirement document to the vendors, and we shortlisted a set of vendors, and the vendors showed up and did a demo against that requirements document. One of the things I say to my clients is, don't just focus on how well the asset management system fits my requirements. It is important how your organization feels about that system. I'll give you an example. That red button that shows up on the top right every time, and it never goes away no matter what I do. I've already talked to IT about it 100 times. Now I'm standing in mud and my tablet is wet, and that stupid button is covering the other button that I want to click on. That's going to it's just going to spin you to a new dimension of piss that you don't need to be in. And it's important to look at the usability and likability of the system as well. So now you got the requirements, which is going to say how well it fits your jig. Now you got your users looking at them and getting a feel, like a speed dating, for how they feel about the system. Then right now we're in the second phase of it, and what we did is we created stories with the client that, okay, like so-and-so walks into work this morning and this happens and then this goes on. Now we handed the stories over to the shortlist of this second round of demos for the vendors, and then we're doing much longer demos, and the vendors are showing up and actually walking their system, how it's going to walk through this story. So I know that was a long answer, but does that answer your question?
I think you did. I think we.
Okay. All right.
Hey, we're getting short. How many slides do you have left?
That's
Malak?
it. I have one extra slide that I was going to show at the end.
Hey, so what I think might be important to know is that and whenever you enter a new software into a municipality or county, the IT folks can get really, like another thing that's coming into the county or the municipality is, and something that we do that's different. We offer software as a service, so it's a managed service. So the actual software is being used by us, and that's good in a lot of ways because we're really good at it and we do it all the time for a lot of different, a lot of different assets. Pavement, water, sewer, stormwater facilities, bridges, wastewater treatment. But it also takes the workload off of you. right? So who needs more work at the municipality where you're at, where we can get you the results that you're looking for? And the big deal here, and Malak, you were talking, is being able to tell the story, right? There's one thing to have a lot of data. There's a lot of things to have software in place, but we need to be able to make it into a focused or a presentation where the elected officials truly understand what it means to achieve some level of service, so that the bridges are not dropping below 3 or 4, whatever that looks like, and all the stakeholders really have to agree on it. So we're here as a consulting firm to help you tell the story and to navigate on what needs to be done and with all assets.
I got one more extra slide that I was going to share with the team. So I got this piece of paper from my therapist, but I really like it because it applies to everything in my head. Your challenging situation as your organization is we don't like our way we're doing asset management. There comes a choice point at every point. This goes back to me saying you want to nudge your program in the right direction. When you're making a decision on how you maintain things, move towards where you want to be as an organization, right? I want to be less reactive, more planned and proactive. Maybe you want to have an 80% planned work and only 20% firefighting. So that it's just what I love about it is it shows that it's just it's a series of many small decisions, not just one big decision by one person. It's a lot of small decisions made by a lot of different people in your organization to nudge you towards where you want to be. And that is my last slide. Thank you.
Yeah, I always like to think that whatever we do needs to support the primary purpose, right?
Yeah.
And when it comes to managing assets, do we know or are we guessing? And we're hoping that we can remove some of the guesswork and allow the elected officials to understand the consequences of funding, different treatments, so that we can maintain the infrastructure the way it needs to be maintained. So Malak, great job. We're getting folks in the chat telling what a good job. I appreciate you presenting today. I appreciate everybody attending our 50th Lunch and Learn. Really, it's been a great ride. So our next Lunch and Learn will be in August. It's August 27th at 11:30 a.m. And the topic is talking to elected officials, right? Which is always can be challenging, but there's a way about going about it that hopefully that'll earn you brownie points and get you moving in the right direction. And our own Keith Pugh will be giving that presentation, and you might have some help. But Keith Pugh, the past national president for APWA, and so we'll be looking forward to that. If your email address is in our contact list, then you're getting these emails. Great. If not, send me an email. We can include you in the list, and Caleb will get that fixed. He said he wasn't getting there. So anyway, thanks everybody. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Steve. Bye.